on this episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists.
Students can collaborate just like faculty can. And if we provide the resources for them to do that, they will do it. And they learn what it means when you say evidence-based decision making. They learn what that means because they're contributing to the evidence. You know, the whole team isn't on board. It can't just be that Annie goes, I heard this great information and I want to do something differently. Because if you don't have autonomy in your dental hygiene practice, you go nowhere. So it doesn't make a difference. You're dead in the water. You have to be able to have that environment of trust and confidence that you can make decisions for your practice.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists, episode number 437. I'm your host, Andrew Johnston, and thank you so much for joining us today. In this episode, Annie Walters joins me again as co-host, and we have a chance to chat with amazing JoAnn Gurenlian. She's been on the show multiple times before. She's always fun. We jumped around a little bit with our topics, as we're known to do, but I feel like the main theme was, well, at least for me, it was kind of in the lines of, what should we be doing as dental hygienists? And what is that we're not currently doing that is something that we need to move into? Anymore, it feels like the lines are blurred about whose responsibility it is to do certain things. And I feel like we need to really step up and claim our role and responsibility in the offices. Otherwise, we're going to lose it. We can't just be the profi people in the office and not getting respect like we deserve. So we talk a lot about that. We talk a lot about research, which is probably an area that we can easily move into. And again, claiming that space, we talk about like what an important part it is in our education. If you think back to some of your education, I don't think I did too much research, but there are projects and opportunities for research in the school settings, and there seems to not be as much in the real world setting. So we talk a little bit more about that and how research plays such an important role in our work life. I can't say enough good things about JoAnn. She's phenomenal. I'm really looking forward to having her again back on the show to finish some of these conversations that we started in today's show. So that's going to have to happen. And then next week, we have an episode about antibiotics and antibiotic stewardship with Sue Scherer. I think many of you actually probably know Sue. She's pretty well known, but this is the first time I think I've had an opportunity to just sit down and have a chat with her. And I'll tell you, first impressions, she's super engaging. She's really freaking smart. She knows her stuff, but it's so conversational to her. Like you can tell that this is really a part of who she is rather than just learning a subject to be able to speak on it. And so I really appreciate her. She's very well spoken. I can't wait for you to listen to that episode because it's really good. So make sure you come back next week for that. And then if you'll do us a favor, hit that subscribe button or that follow button on Apple Podcasts, and please tell your friends about this show. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, but it would be really good if you guys would just at least share one episode that made a difference in like your clinical practice or how you approach things, something that really grabbed your attention. And also don't be shy to reach out to our guests. If there's a guest that you connected with, there's a message, there's a style that you really connected with, make sure you reach out to them. They really love that. Their contact information is usually in the show notes. And if not, you guys are all pretty savvy. You can find them, I'm sure, on social media pretty easily. So that's it for this week, and enjoy this episode with JoAnn Gurenlian.
A tale of two hygienists.
Welcome everyone into the interview portion of the podcast. We're joined today by JoAnn Gurenlian. JoAnn, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
Oh my gosh, it's been too many years. I was so excited to meet up with you in February and start to, attempt to plan this podcast that never actually happened. But we're joined today also by Annie Walters. Annie, welcome to the show as well.
Thanks, Andrew. Happy to be here.
I'm really enjoying your co-hosting abilities right now. So
Great. I'm so glad.
I'm looking forward to the contributions that we're going to have in this conversation because I envision this as being JoAnn. I have some very pointed questions that I feel like you're going to be a relative expert in. And then I have like Annie has, we were talking a little bit beforehand, like she has some really good like contributions to this topic as well. So listeners, we're going to talk eventually kind of about the role of the dental hygienist, scope of practice, kind of what we should be doing as hygienists, like what has changed and what hasn't. But before we get into that, JoAnn, speaking of change, like so much has changed since you've been on the show. Do you mind catching up the listeners for those who have not met you yet? And then also for those who knew you from before, like what have you been up to lately?
Sure, I'd love to. Well, I will tell you that I am presently the Director of Education, Research, and Advocacy for the American Dental Hygienists Association. And that's a role I've had for the last 2.5 years. And I honestly thought I had retired. I was previously working as the Graduate Program Director at Idaho State University's Department of Dental Hygiene and had been doing that for 11 years and had previously been in education, research, academia, practice, administration, all of it, loving all of it. But I've been a seasoned dental hygienist and I thought I was in the twilight of my years and maybe this would be a perfect opportunity to retire and travel with my husband and alphabetize the kitchen. And I don't know what I was supposed to be doing, but, take time off and let all of the younger generation of dental hygienists take over and, phase myself out of my career. And I announced my retirement. And 2 days later, Ann Bottrell, then our CEO of ADHA, called me and said, "You are absolutely not retiring. You come and work for me." So I said, "I'll do that as long as I can have a month off to just do nothing." And she granted me that month. And then I came and worked for ADHA. And what a great opportunity for me. It has been such a terrific position. And I love working with everyone at ADHA. And the lesson that I learned is don't retire, keep working. It's a great
Keep going.
experience. And it's good to stay active in our profession because it is a great profession.
It really is. And I'm very happy to see that you're in that role because I think that as far as qualifications go, there's probably no one more qualified, but your passion and your love for it is evident. One thing I want to talk about though, before we get into kind of our topic as well is, so in addition to all of the other stuff that you're doing, I feel like I saw your name quite a bit on papers that you have written or co-authored with different people.
Me too.
Can you speak a little bit to that kind of like research and the things that you are passionate about speaking and writing on?
Sure. So one of the problems I have in my life is I never say no. And people who are involved in research, will ask me, will I collaborate with them on a project? And as you know, when we had the unfortunate circumstance of the COVID pandemic, ADHA, before I even started working with them, had asked me to chair a task force related to the pandemic. And that was a very interesting time because we needed to right away gear up and start addressing how do we manage this unbelievable infection. And as a part of that, then I began working on behalf of ADHA with the ADA Health Policy Institute. We wanted to know not only how was the pandemic affecting the health of the public, but how is this affecting dental hygienists and dentists? And in terms of employment, in terms of infection control, in terms of their mental health. And so we began a series of research studies related to that. So you probably have seen those articles in the Journal of Dental Hygiene, in the Journal of the American Dental Association. We learned a lot doing that. And then in addition to that, as a graduate program director, I've worked with a lot of thesis students and doctoral students and collaborate with them on a whole host of research. And what we hope to do and strive to do is publish what we are studying. I will tell you that one of the things that we learned through COVID was that was the perfect storm for dental hygienists who were really unsettled about the workplace setting to have a reason to leave, either temporarily or permanently. And so then we began studying workforce issues because that just exploded after the pandemic and during the pandemic. So that's another area that I got involved in looking at. And we addressed workforce issues. We've been addressing workforce issues and trying to tap into what are the issues that hygienists have been facing and dentists have been facing since the pandemic. It's been really fascinating to learn about this. I won't say that any of us are experts in it, but we are learning through the research process. And that's an important thing to do. Research drives learning. It drives change. That's what I love about research, whether it's related to pathology or it's related to qualitative issues, it drives change. So discovery is great.
You're speaking to me because I absolutely love research as well. And I work at the university where I live, and I'm constantly talking with my students about evidence-based research and how important research is to move the profession of dental hygiene forward. And we're constantly building upon our knowledge base. And it's so critical if we're to advance our profession and elevate that standard of care. And so I know you touched on, you really work with graduate students in research. How do you feel about research at the undergraduate level? Because I know, like with my students, they are implementing research, but I'm more so wondering, do you think at any point in undergraduate curricula they could incorporate their like original research in undergraduate curricula? Because I feel like I don't know if undergraduate is quite there yet, but I would love to see it go in that direction.
I absolutely do think that students can incorporate research at the undergraduate level. It may not be at the same level as somebody who's doing clinical bench research, because that's really involved. But there's certainly a place for it at the undergraduate level. I have seen students get involved in it. We host a research presentation opportunity for undergraduate students and graduate students at our ADHA annual conference. And I am always impressed with what students are doing, whether it's a literature search or they actually conduct quantitative survey research or a qualitative study. And some students actually are doing clinical research at the undergraduate level.
I love that.
And I think if we allow possibilities, they happen. If we say, here are the reasons why that can't happen at the undergraduate level, because the students are so busy or because the faculty are so busy, we put up barriers that are artificial. Students can collaborate just like faculty can. And if we provide the resources for them to do that, they will do it. And they learn what it means when you say evidence-based decision-making. They learn what that means because they're contributing to the evidence. I love giving them opportunities. And even if it's something small, they get that bug. I mean, I'm looking at your face right now, Annie, and I see how charged up you are about research. And I see how excited I get about it. I mean, I don't worry about the little things, pick something and let them explore, let them experiment, let them see what that process is like. Once they get the bug, they're going for it. And I think we make assumptions. Well, the students will understand research if we show them research studies. Well, why would we think that? Is there something wrong with their minds that, we have such special minds that they're, no, they're perfectly capable. We just have to teach them what the concepts are and they will understand. So I love it. I think that's a great question. Let them do it. Let them have these experiences and then let them present. Give them the opportunities to present their ideas. They have great skills at presentation, and they should be given those opportunities as much as possible.
And I think that ties so much into, I really like that you brought up about breaking down some of those barriers. If we say like, well, they're so busy and the curriculum is so rigid and it's hard to, but if the students will collaborate, like you said, and giving them that opportunity will give them the bug to want to pursue research more. And I think getting them to understand like what research is and the importance behind it. But I also think too, that research is so critical to elevating the standard of care. And I think I would like you to speak into that a little bit more too, as far as where dental hygiene is right now and the direction that it's going and how research plays into that.
So, and I saw, Andrew, you might have wanted to say something. Yeah. So while Annie and I could talk for the next
Yeah.
hours
We
on
absolutely
research.
could,
So I
yeah.
just didn't know if you had a comment or something.
Honestly, my thing was actually pretty aligned with Annie. It's you were saying, like, you could see in Annie's face about how excited she is, right? These students get excited about it, but I'll tell you though, the clinical hygienist doesn't really have a lot of opportunity for research. It doesn't feel like. Why are we seeing that kind of fall off once we enter
Yeah, good
everyday
question.
clinical practice? But like Annie was saying, where can we go? What does that look like for the clinicians?
So I think, one of the things that's really interesting is there is a study that came out, and I don't know if you saw this. The International Federation of Dental Hygienists conducted a survey worldwide among dental hygienists, and how are they using evidence in clinical practice? So I'm relating to what you just said, Andrew, but I'm weaving it all in. And it was so interesting because the study showed that I think 2/3 are like 64%. So we'll round up and say 2/3 of dental hygienists were really not using evidence to make decisions in clinical practice, whether it was treatment or whether it was related to product recommendations, whatever. They just weren't hitting the mark. They weren't relating to evidence. So what does that tell us about things? One is maybe we're not teaching that in our dental hygiene programs. We're not communicating enough the relevance of this or the importance of how we make decisions to improve health outcomes for patient care. Maybe we're just not maybe hitting the mark somewhere along the way, or maybe there is that fallout. You get an impression in education, and then you get in practice, and you're so busy trying to do clinical instrumentation that you're not connecting all the dots again. You get waylaid by clinical practice. So I think part of what we need to do is keep hygienists engaged in meetings, in continuing education, connected with their dental hygiene programs, gone but not forgotten. Stay connected so that you're bringing forward what is our research? What is our research telling us? How does that fit with the way that we practice, with the way that we use information in practice? Because one thing I know is we all love technology, but we forget about research. What is the research telling us, even in relation to technology? How do we guide practice? How does research guide practice? And everyone kind of goes, well, I'm afraid of that. I'm afraid I can't read that study. So I'll read the abstract, or I'll read the, just give me the guts. Let me just go right to conclusion. What does the conclusion say? I can't read all that middle stuff, methods and results. Like, that's boring, or it's over my head. So I think that tells us that, in our education programs, we need to teach students how to read research, right? How do you interpret the hard part? And then, why is it hard? Why haven't we figured out how to make it easy? It's not that hard. It's not rocket science. There's some basic fundamental principles, and the rest is kind of standard stuff. So how do we teach that so that we all feel comfortable looking at those research reports? Now, maybe there's some that are way over all of our heads, and there's definitely some. I'm not into biochemistry, I gotta admit, and there's some histology that's way over my head. I have to work at learning it and reading it, and maybe reading it a few times before I get it, and looking up a few words in the dictionary. But that's okay. We have to challenge ourselves. But as far as clinical practice goes, why do we allow that disconnect to continue when we're all great people? Why aren't we having those courses as part of our continuing education and encouraging our colleagues to attend those courses and translating that research to clinical practice so we can say that's what it means? But then we have to take it to the next step. And the next step is, how will I use that information tomorrow in practice? And how will I share that with the dental team? Because everybody has to be on board. It can't just be, well, Annie and Andrew heard a great course and now they want to use that. Everybody in the practice has to understand and appreciate that information and say, will that drive change for our practice? Does that mean we do something differently? And to what level are we all on board with that? because that's where the buck stops. If the whole team isn't on board, it can't just be that Annie goes, I heard this great information and I want to do something differently. Because if you don't have autonomy in your dental hygiene practice, you go nowhere. So it doesn't make a difference. You're dead in the water. You have to be able to have that environment of trust and confidence that you can make decisions for your practice. So that's, to me, where we need to put all the puzzle pieces together so that we can drive decision making, we can make changes, we can help our patients improve their health. And that's where I see it going. So even as far as, you mentioned, what's happening, what's different, where do we want to go in the research arena? We're going to have a research workshop at ADHA's annual conference. It's a pre-conference, so it will be on July 25th. And we're going to talk about, what do we want our research agenda to evolve to? What are some gaps in research that we need to address? Who wants to do it? Who wants to conduct that research? Who wants to be part of that? What are some of the myths related to what we think is good practice now? And what do we want to do about that? How do we make decisions in terms of dental hygiene education programs? What should be taught and maybe what shouldn't be taught? Like, why do we teach some of the things that we are teaching? Is there good evidence to support that or not? And we're going to have some industry perspective about that as well, because industry has wonderful research. And how does that impact some of the decisions that we make? How do we want to use that information? And then we're going to have some discussions about what we've just heard and what do we want to do with that information and how do we want to drive research for our future. So come be part of that and listen and learn. I think we'll all be learning a lot from that research workshop and the discussions that will be had, because it's time to look at, what do we want our future research to be and where do we want to fill in the gaps and who will do it? Who will do it? Will we rely on our grad students to conduct that research? Will we hope that our dental hygiene educators will collaborate more and conduct some of that research? Where's our line of succession for our dental hygiene researchers? Will it be our undergrad students that we've inspired, like Annie is doing? Okay.
Too many jumping off points.
You're speaking my language so much. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, yes, this is everything.
All right, JoAnn. So this wasn't part, I do want to get into, like, you're talking about the next steps, like who's going to take over. I do want to talk about like succession. I do want to talk about the thing we talked about beforehand about the dental hygienist of yesteryear versus the dental hygienist now, the engagement, all of that. We're going to come right back to that. So that's part two. But before we get into that, one of the things that you said that just like, I want to focus on, when you talked about having part of our continuing education requirements be like research, like have an hour of research every year or whatever. Is there a way to make that happen? We have legislation all over the board with renewal cycles every 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, with different states having things like human trafficking or opioid or all of these different ones, right? But not everyone is the same. So is there a way that we could get some sort of standardized, like this is your core CE you have to take as a dental hygienist, as maybe it's through the ADHA or whatever, and talk to all the states into enacting that into legislation?
Okay, Andrew. Wouldn't it be great if we said what we think our continuing education should be?
I knew that we were going to go there. I knew we were going to go there. Okay. Yes,
you
it
asked
would be
the
great.
question.
No, it would. I wasn't baiting you, but that's exactly what I was hoping for.
I mean, let's think about this. We have state boards who mandate what continuing education, infection control, ethics, opioids, pick something. And we sit there and go, wait, didn't I just take an ethics course 2 years ago? Like, how many times do I need to know the same information? And it is often the same information. Wouldn't it be great if we as a body organized and said, we really think these are the topics we need to have instead of that, and brought it forward as a group? We think these are the key areas we need education in. We can provide that as ADHA. we can do that. And we do offer 122 now continuing education courses on our CE Smart platform. So we offer education, and we are developing now even some more segments of education that we will be providing in this next year. So yes, I think we should, but it shouldn't come from me as the Director of Education and Research. It should come from our members who say, we want this. It should come from dental hygienists as a body saying, we want this. We think this is appropriate for our professional development. And then going to the individual state boards and saying, by the way, this should be universal and it's appropriate for our professional growth and development. And wouldn't it be nice if we had standardization across the United States for not just that, but many other things that just make sense? But let's start. It's hard sometimes to get started on something. So where do we start? How about if we look at the states that have dental hygiene committees on state boards? And maybe that's the place to start, that they say, here are the things that we think hygienists should have. And even if it's one or two, let's just start and see if we can get momentum through that process. Because, everybody says, well, ADHA should do this. Well, you're ADHA.
Yeah.
I'm ADHA, but everyone else is ADHA too. And why doesn't that come forward from a body of individuals who make those kinds of recommendations? I think it's when it's top down, people resent. When it's bottom up, people embrace. So I think it's really important that we look at where do these kinds of recommendations come from. It's a great recommendation. It makes sense. If we could just get more hygienists on state boards who make these decisions, or separate dental hygiene boards or committees, it makes sense to empower them to make these kinds of decisions. It allows us to elevate ourselves and our practice, and it benefits everyone.
So to part two of this, though, and this is kind of where I'm like a little bit cringy, because all of what you said is right and true. The people need to be the voice in all these things. Unfortunately, what I hear a lot is not the right voice. There are, and look, hygienists, don't get mad at me, but kind of, it's okay if you do. It's the ones that want things easier. It's the things that don't want as many regulations. I don't think as a body, the hygiene profession is as engaged as it once was. I don't think that people of generations before me are necessarily at the helm anymore, trying to guide and direct and use that directive of keeping the public safe as their kind of like guiding star. Now it's more of like, how can I just get in and do my job real quick and be done? Is that a wrong sentiment to have?
No, but Andrew, I think what you're suffering from is ageism. Don't get offended by that. But think about what happens. And I think this is very much a typical thing. You have older individuals, seasoned, experienced individuals, I'm talking about myself. We have a different level of interest and inclination to be involved. We're not afraid to be involved. We are established. You have younger individuals who graduate from dental hygiene school, and they want to get out and get a job and earn a decent income and pay off their student loans and, have stability in their life. And their goals are very different. I mean, this is not new, by the way. This has been happening for 100 years in dental hygiene. And so your place where you are in life is very different from where a younger generation would be, who says, quite frankly, I don't care what your legislative agenda is, because that's not where I am in my life. And I need to do other things. I have different goals about my life, and your issues are not my issues, and I'm not interested in being involved. Or their sentiment is, you have a bunch of old people who are doing that, and I can't relate to them. And it's kind of part of it is where we all are in the generations of our careers, where we are looking at that. How do you get more young individuals, new grads engaged? You start, by kind of telling them these are some of the issues that could affect your career. And they're still going to look at you like, yeah, so what? I don't really care about that right now. It's because it's not affecting me. Well, it is, but I don't see it as affecting me. But then when they're out for a few years and they start to see restrictions imposed on them, it suddenly becomes more apparent, more real world, and then it's like, well, I would like to have more privileges. I would like to be able to do these things. And it goes from an unconscious level to maybe a semi-conscious level. And eventually, as they become more experienced, it becomes a more conscious level. So, but then where are they in their world? Are they able to devote some time to this? Because it is a commitment. And think about what we're seeing right now is there's so many hygienists who are saying, I can't afford to be involved right now. I am trying to have work-life balance. I am trying to raise my children. I am trying to do X, Y, and Z other things. And this takes more out of my life. And here's another result of the pandemic. People said, I have to say no. I don't want to be involved. I need my life to be less stress, to be different. I'm not devoting 8 hours a week to this. I want 8 hours of peace in my life. So we have seen that shift. People are making different choices because their lives were threatened, literally threatened. And so the effect of that mentally, emotionally has taken a toll. That's why we're doing a mental health program all weekend, because we have to take seriously what is happening to people in terms of their emotional and mental state. And, we cannot take this lightly. We have to be respectful of where people are in terms of what they think is an important agenda for them.
So how do we, because all those things are so critical, like you were saying, being respectful of people's experiences and emotional state and mental health and all those things. And like you were saying with students or new graduates and the disconnect between new graduates and seasoned professionals, and how do we, I guess, change the narrative, or do you think that student or new graduates need to be in practice for a little while before they come to the realization of the state of dental hygiene and want to become more involved and make those changes? Or how do we navigate some of those things like you were mentioning?
I think part of it is we keep doing the things that we do, which is share the information. We keep sharing the information. We keep educating, keep trying to inspire, who are your inspirations, and we mentor. And then when someone says, I'm ready to be involved, you involve them. You don't say, well, we'll wait a few more years till you think you're ready. No, involve them. Give them activities and things that allow them to contribute. Don't turn anyone away, and engage. And there are students who want to be engaged, and you give them those opportunities. And there are, young individuals who are fresh in their career. Give them those opportunities to be involved, but respect the fact that not everyone will be ready.
Right.
They may not be ready for 10 years.
Yeah.
When they are ready. And by the way, step aside and give them the chance to be able to do some of those things. And they will not act the way you act. And they will not do the things that you think it should be done a certain way. They may have better skills than I have, which is perfectly great. Don't mourn the fact that it isn't done the way you would do it. Just let them do some things, and it's okay to be doing things differently. Just we have to get over ourselves.
Amen to that. Amen to that. JoAnn, these 30 minutes go by way too fast. I got through 2 of my questions of the 7. So hopefully you'll come back on. We'll have another discussion. You, one of my favorite people in the world, and also in dental hygiene, but in the world. Thank you for being on. If someone wanted to reach out to you, they had questions about what we talked about or maybe anything else, like how can they reach you?
I try to be as accessible as possible. I'm available through ADHA. My email is joanng@adha.net. So that's JoAnng@adha.net. So email me. Thank you for having me. And I'll come back anytime. We have lots to talk
Thanks,
about.
JoAnn.
So great
so
to
much.
see you both.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.